Welcome to It's All About Connection, NVC with Dr. B.
So welcome everybody. Today we have a very special episode. Um, who is with me today is Ryan, who works for me at the Bigby Method, and Timmy, who that's not really his real name, but we'll let it go. Timmy is my big brother. And we were having a conversation the other day, which has been very fun since my brother read my book. He now is like really a little bit more into NVC, and he was having a question the other day about having a conversation with his stepson that he was a little worried about. So he called me to get some tips. And somehow we got into this conversation about how, like, sometimes it's just better just to beat up on one another and be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and then he was like, yeah, well, I mean, I guess you can start. Like, you want to give us your thoughts on this a little bit? And then I wanted Ryan to be here because this all started into like that boys or guys, like that's how they solve their problems. They just beat up on each other and then it's done. And like that happens in sports a lot, you know. And then I was like, okay, well, let's have a conversation about this. And maybe I could bring Ryan into this because I know he's a coach, so he can probably look at it from a coach's perspective as well as somebody that's very trained up in NVC. So, Ryan, I hope that you're going to help me to impart some wisdom here on Timmy, who's not really Timmy. Okay. Okay, bro. So, what was your thinking about this?
Well, my thoughts were because with my other children, it used to be my way or the highway, and I used to have conversations with them, and it just went one way, and it would escalate, especially when they shrugged their shoulders and would never give a response. So my stepson, I thought I'd try to do things a little differently since I read your book and consulted with you. And it was really hard at first because really when they're looking at you, the teenagers, and they're not giving you the time of day, really what you want to do is throw the table out the window and tell them like it is. Because truthfully, I was kind of brought up that way. It was my mom's way or no way, and parts of it kind of worked. And I kind of said, well, like in sports, we're on the basketball courts and you're trash talking another guy, and then pushes comes to shoves, and you can't stand this guy, and you guys duke it out. The next thing you know, the game's over. You're hugging each other, you're having a beer with them, and that's that. So that's kind of my thought.
So, yes. So your thinking was that sometimes, like, really just being able to, beat up on each other brings you to some level of closure and connection, like you've experienced that before.
Yeah. So even with my employees, sometimes I got guys that just do not get along, and I try to sit them down and have grown up conversations and let them speak. And sometimes I just walk out of the office and I let them go at it with each other, and I hear the yelling and the screaming and this and that, and they settle things. I'm not saying with hitting it or anything, but they settle things
But
in
it comes
those
to
ways.
so yeah, so this is I'm curious about this. I'm curious. I don't know what to say to this because I mean, personally couldn't imagine settling anything like that. And I don't know if it's just like because it's a male to female thing. I don't know. I don't think so, but my colleagues and I, she was a female, we used to laugh about this because we worked with young men for the most part. And I heard this before, like from some of the guys kids that I work with, like, yeah, on the football field, sometimes we'll just beat the shit out of each other and then it's done. The whole thing's done. So we used to like joke, hey, could you imagine us just like beating the shit out of each other and then just being complete, you know? And so, yeah, I'm curious, Ryan, about your thoughts on this because you're kind of like, it's nice that you're right in between me and my brother on the screen here because, yeah, because I'm so to the NVC way, he's so to the like sports, you know, other way, and you're kind of in the middle of the road all the way around. So it'd be nice to hear like your thinking on this.
Man, I don't really it's hard because I've been in both worlds, so like as you guys are talking, like I'm trying to think in my head like why I've witnessed both, right? And like I do notice like in the sports world, right? There's a lot more movement towards vulnerability and honesty. So like, Austin FC, I know their academy here does like restorative circles. I know Gonzaga's basketball program does the same thing. I know University of Georgia football. That was one of their I went to a conference last year for coaching what drives winning, and one of their biggest secrets was what they call, oh, what the heck was it called, skull sessions. And it sounds like macho, fits in the football world, but really they said what it was, or at least what I got from it, is they were kind of like restorative circles, or like circles where there was emotional safety to learn like connect with each other deeper, right? So like and obviously Georgia's at the machoiest, the manliest, whatever, maybe other than rugby sport there is, right? Georgia's success over the last couple of years speaks for itself, right? So there's that. I don't know. I was trying to think through it. I was thinking like, well, first off, some thoughts I've had are like well, being vulnerable is like fucking scary, and as males we think of it as weakness. I just had a pretty vulnerable talk with one of my best friends today, and it was, I mean, I was nowhere near 100% honest with like my experience, because like vulnerable is scary. And whereas like maybe we're more accustomed to the physical, altercations on the sports field, and you get, or whatever, as boys growing up, you get into like these matches, these altercations, and you get it all out, so that maybe there's some need of like authenticity and just honesty, getting out. And then maybe there's also some weirdly like need for like safety or emotional safety and connection in there, because you now have gone down the worst case scenario, like we just fought it out, like outside of like us killing each other, like the worst thing has happened. And now like we see that, and now we have like a shared experience of some sort, and we survived it. And maybe there is some sort of like weirdly inherent safety in that. I don't really know, but I would say like I would rather get hurt physically than I would emotionally, as a guy. Like it's easier to
And
recover.
I also think, since mankind, you were taught as a guy and even a girl, if you're getting bullied, you're not going to sit there and have a conversation with the person that's bullying with you, and you're going to solve the situation. It's kind of like you're always taught, fight back. You want
Well,
to.
even Marshall Rosenberg, the guy that developed NVC, said, there are moments where there's protective use of force is necessary, right? That is a real thing when safety is the need that's in play. And two people, a guy is like beating the crap out of a girl on the streets. Let's say, he used to give this example. He's not just going to walk by and talk about needs with that person in that moment. No, he's going to break them apart, and he's going to at least restrict the guy from hitting him. He might hit the guy too, right? Like there's a moment where you need protective use of force. That's a real thing. But are you doing it to impose your power on somebody, or are you doing it to get to some need like safety? I think that that's a very big difference right there. Um, and I don't know, this is also just a random thought as I was thinking about, like, war has always seemed so strange to me. And yes, there's moments in our history, I think, where you need protective use of force for war as well. But it just seems to me to be this strange thing where, like, people that don't even know each other are just killing each other. It's kind of, to me, almost a similar thing as two guys on a football field that decide that, like, they don't, they're upset with each other, so they just go at it. I wonder, when it's over, is it really over, or is like one of those guys now more the dominant guy?
Most of the time,
Is it?
really, it's over. Like, for example, I was watching the Stanley Cup hockey. Oh my gosh, brawl, fights, drop the gloves, refs just standing there letting them beat each other up, get it out of it. After the game, they line up, the handshakes. Both teams went out to dinner. It's almost kind of
But
a
is it, but when they're
thing.
out to dinner, like within their mind, there's no like residual. There's no like not
I,
worried, like
I'm
no
not saying
anxiety, paranoia, or is that the kind of thing where like guys like Ryan's saying, I won't ever really be real about how it really is underneath here. I'm like, I'm not gonna ever real. So they've learned how to put on a really good game face
I'm
around
sure, yes,
what's just
it's
happening.
both, but it's like me and Ryan. We could be friends, just like my best friend I played one-on-one basketball with, and we come to blows with each other. It starts getting rough, and we start hitting each other, and blah blah blah, and then we go out and have beers after. And hey, man, it was a good shot you had in my face, and all that.
Yeah. I am curious about like I wonder, when I think about like all the depression and anxiety that happens out there in the world, if really what is there is a lot of like just suppressed emotions that no one's being real about.
I I'm
Um,
coming from a competitions part.
right. You're just
So
talking about competition here, but it spills over into other areas. Like yeah, in games, I could see that. Like I could see because
I think there's constraints and lines drawn in competition. Like where you're like comparing war versus
right,
football, right? Like football, there's lot like you have every sport has constraints. That's what makes sports so exciting, right? Like there's constraints. You have to play within the lines, within the rules, right? And so I think there's some sort of expectations, barriers, safeties set, right? Like there's refs there, and obviously not every case, as you look at like some international soccer games, but there's things set to keep people quote unquote safe, right? So
Mhm.
like you can push the limits knowing that their refs might get involved, the league might get involved, whatever, right? People aren't just going to go off the hinges and kill each other. So I think sports is an interesting one because I think we do use it a lot as an outlet of our I know I have a many and still do use it as an outlet of my emotions. But I think it's also a hell of a lot scarier where it's like me and Timmy want to have a real conversation, and maybe I'm struggling with depression, or maybe he's angry at me if I'm his stepson, and he wants to have a real talk. Like I think it's a lot easier to just be, and I notice this as a coach with my players, it's a lot easier to just be um, forceful
Authoritarian.
and yeah, authoritarian than like have a real connection. Like I mean, not a real connection to be like more vulnerable with the players because authority, especially in those moments of coaching or maybe like being a stepfather to a son, uh like it's scarier because then like maybe it's a need for respect or something that doesn't get met, and then what do you do? Or and like or a pecking order of some sort, right? Like I think those are scary moments, and I need to plug my computer in. I
Mhm.
just got the warning. It's
Yeah. Well, and also I am noticing that we're we're probably at time to call here. I don't we're at 13 minutes. I try to keep these to no more than about 15 minutes. I mean, I think what we've just talked about here is interesting anyways, without any real answers.
hmm
But if there is a way to kind of like I guess where you were heading with this, because I want to close on a high note for NVC, which is yeah, that maybe in sports it is a little bit different because of the things that you've just said. And yet there's a real need in our everyday relationships to learn something that's more than just my way or the highway. That's really doesn't, it gets things done quickly, but it really does often damage the relationship and mess people up in the head, one way or another. Um, and I know Steve, or Timmy, you just in the last couple of days, you tried it a little bit differently. And I know you said it was really hard, but I also had a sense in speaking with you this morning about it that you were feeling pretty good about the possibilities of
very
it,
good,
doing
yeah,
something a little
very very
different.
very positive.
Yeah, why is that, if you want to say, because you didn't just go off on him. What was different and why are you feeling more
Uh,
encouraged?
it was kind of using the methods that you've taught and I was using them. I had a whole bunch of stickies when I was doing my conversations with my boy, and it took a lot for me not to want to throw a table out the window and get my point across, because I am the adult and you are the teenager, and the respect asked for, like, like Brian was talking about. But I don't know, it does take work, but it's definitely doable, and the results are, I feel great today compared to
Hmm.
the way I used to handle the conversations with my other kids back in the day, where we all left the table feeling really bad and sad and sorry and angry.
And disconnection, having disconnection as opposed to
Totally.
connection,
And he got it.
which is
I only actually got one shoulder shrug, so it was it was very good. It was very good. So I thank you very much for that.
yeah. Well, it's my pleasure. I often say when I hear those stories, just put one more tally mark in the peace column right there, because that's what it is, compounding peace in my experience. So,
Can I just say, well, I guess it's two things real quick. Yeah, I mean,
yep.
I think like, the conversation I had with Adam today, like, just for like 100% vulnerability, like, we talked about it last week, but I've been like having depression lately. And so he hit me up today and he was like, "How are you doing today?" And usually I would just be like, "I'm good." Like talk about soccer, whatever, because he's a coach as well. And, I just told him I wasn't doing well. So then we talked. He's like, "You want to talk?" And I was like, "Sure." So he gives me a call. And like the first 80% of the conversation was us talking about everything but the reason we called, because that's natural, right? But we only talked for about 10 or 20% of the conversation around what was going on for me, but just the fact that he took time. Like I noticed I've felt like significantly better ever since that call. And it's scary as like, fuck, it's scary as shit. Like it's so scary, but I feel significantly better from that call. And I've never really had that type of relationship modeled to me with a male. So it's like kind of nice. It's scary, but it's nice. It's still even scary for what it means for our relationship, like from here on, And I noticed like I want to like push away and be like, like there's some type of vulnerability or to hold my whatever, like man, like my edge or whatever, right? And then also the other thing I'll say is like just in the sports world, I was reading a book, Jason Williams, who was like a breakout star at Duke and then went on to the Chicago Bulls and got in a bad wreck. But in there, they're like basically, I'm gonna mess this story up, but the point of it is like they were down to the last second against someone like late in the season, whether it was the Final Four, the national championship game, and I think the play was drawn to go to Jason Williams, but the star of the team decided, maybe it was Duhon or Boozer, I can't remember, decided that they were going to take the shot. And anyways, they took it. Like they didn't listen to the play that Coach K drew up, and they lost the game. They missed it, lost the game, and they go back in the locker room and like you expect as a dude, Coach K to absolutely like rip the dude. And instead, Coach K's in the locker room and he's like crying, which I found like really interesting or surprising. And he was like saying like basically he was disappointed in the guy because the guy didn't trust him. And
Mm,
he was like, we've developed this relationship and you didn't trust me
mm,
on that last play. And like the guy basically said like his vulnerability, his authenticity, his realness, and just like showing what it really was for him. Like, and just, anytime someone you care about, I think also comes in role is disappointed in you, that can be way more powerful than them being angry at
Yeah,
you.
I
But
lost $100 on that boozer shot.
so I did get it somewhat right. So I did get it some. All right.
I was
that's
crying
funny.
too.
Okay. I think I think
Trying to.
you were trying to. Okay. I think that's a really good place to end. I'm going to close out with the music. Thanks, you guys, for sharing and for being so real and to just having this conversation that I hope will be eye-opening and, yeah, just keep the conversation going in other places, especially for folks that aren't so open to being
Keep it
vulnerable.
going, Dr. B and
Thank
Ryan.
you. Hmm.
Later.
All right, here we go.
You've been listening to It's All About Connection.
NVC with Dr. B. For more episodes and guest bios, please visit us at www.thebigbymethod.com. That's www.thebigbymethod.com. And remember, empathy first.